Two friends just made a podcast. Two good friends just made a podcast. Two friends just made a podcast. It's called Culture Bucket. Two friends just made a podcast. Two good friends just made a podcast. Two friends just made a podcast. Culture Bucket, Georgia and Alex.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Culture Bucket. This is your 49th episode, one episode away from the big 50. It's a pleasure to have you with us again for another special, our fourth special, I believe, and today we are going to be focusing in on the 2021 Nicolas Cage revenge movie, I suppose you could call it, Pig. And as always, I can't talk about it on my own. I have to be joined by another human, and that human's name is Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hi, George. Hi, everyone. How you doing, George?
Pretty good today. Feeling fresh and feisty, and ready to talk about truffles and deconstructed scallops, which is good.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm very excited. I've been wanting to talk to you about this film for a while, and now we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes,
it's exciting. Should we get straight into it?
We should get straight into it. So we're going to start with some
basic introductions.
Yes, basic introductions of the film.
It
then
is a film.
Some plot, spoilers, synopsis and stuff. You should watch the film before you listen to this episode. We'll
deconstruct the plot a little bit, talk about it as we go through it.
You're already deconstructing, eh?
Yeah. Then we'll share any interesting little tidbits of trivia that we've managed to snuffle out with our little noses. And then we might talk about what we think of the cast and our overall thoughts of the movie. How many buckets of pig swill are we going to give it? So, this is a movie directed by Michael Sarnowski. I believe it may be his directorial debut.
It is. It definitely is his directorial debut.
Well done, Michael Sarnowski. I think he's directed a few shorts and TV episodes, etc. in the past. This is his first main film.
Yeah.
And it's signified by being somebody's first movie by how low the budget is, but you don't feel it when you're watching it, I think. But we can talk about that more as we go on.
Yeah.
It stars Nicolas Cage as Rob, Chef Rob, and Alex Wolff as Amir.
Yes.
And pretty much for 90% of the movie, those are the two actors that you're going to be spending your time with in this film. It's a bit of a two-hander, but there are a few other people that pop up, notably Adam Arkin pops up in it. And past Adam Arkin, actually, there's not many other people that have much screen time. But
no.
Those are your main actors. It was written by Michael Sarnowski and Vanessa Block, and it was released in 2021, and it was sort of originally announced and then marketed and advertised in a way that made it look like something of a Nicolas Cage revenge thriller in the vein of John Wick, maybe, but it looked like your kind of classic Nicolas Cage twist where it has to have something silly about it.
Yeah.
And the silly thing being that instead of trying to avenge his dead wife or something, he is trying to find his missing pig. That was sort of how it was set up, and there were lots of people reacting to it as if, it's another Nicolas Cage bit of nonsense. It's a stupid kind of idea. It's going to be silly. He's going to be running around shooting people and shouting, "Where's my pig?" etc., etc. And then it came out, and it came out in America first before you or I could see it. And suddenly it became the highest reviewed movie of the year on various places like Rotten Tomatoes, which turned my expectations around and made me pretty excited to see it. How were you feeling before you watched it?
Well, I didn't know anything about it because that's how I live life. knowing nothing about anything until
Yeah,
you
fair.
put a review on our Instagram page, and your reviews make me want to watch films. And so I texted you and I was like, I want to watch this film. How can I watch this film? And so from the review, I didn't know what to expect. And then I watched the trailer and I thought, what? Like, your review didn't match the trailer?
No,
really
the trailer
weird.
doesn't match the film, does it? I don't
Yeah,
think.
exactly. But the trailer doesn't even match the film. And so I watched the trailer. And more than John Wick, because I've never seen John Wick, which is a shame. I should watch John Wick.
Maybe you'll have to.
I have to watch John Wick.
Maybe
but
you
I
will
was
have
thinking
to.
about more like Taken. Like, taking my pick. And so I thought, how is this going to be a film about like somebody kidnapping a pig and Nicolas Cage going to get it? It just seemed really surreal, the trailer.
Yeah.
And
And
so
Nicolas Cage makes a lot of surreal films, but I feel like this
Yeah.
film couldn't be any... It's not surreal. There are
well, it
elements of it.
depends moments are, but it's I was just I didn't know what to expect, because your review said one thing, the trailer was different. It's Nicolas Cage, so I went in just like kind of with a very open mind, not knowing what was going to happen.
Which is
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Considering the ordering in which we're releasing these episodes, it's likely that by the time people hear this, you may have seen John Wick,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
I may have.
So, depending on what homeworks get assigned, etc., etc.
Yes.
So, let's go more in depth. Let's talk about the plot of this movie.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild,
Mhm.
and first thing to note is that it's split into parts.
Yes.
Which I think is the first sort of sign that maybe this movie isn't the action-packed spectacle that you're expecting.
Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
film begins and it opens on very serene and sedate shots of the Oregonian wilderness.
Yeah.
Very different to the other piece of culture I've been absorbing a lot of recently that's set in Oregon, which is a game called Days Gone, which is a post-apocalyptic zombie game where you ride around the Oregonian forests on a motorbike shooting zombies with shotguns. And I was playing it the other day and I was like, it would be very odd if you bumped into Nicolas Cage and his little pig in the middle of this this game. But yeah, it opens on this shot of a forest in Oregon, very quiet, very sedate, and this very kind of beautiful floral font appears in the centre of the screen, and it says Part 1, Rustic Mushroom Tart.
Mm.
And
Nice.
and we go, yeah, and we sort of, the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes has close to no dialogue
No. Yeah.
in this movie.
Yeah.
And we
It's very calm and beautiful.
yeah, and we see Nicolas Cage.
Mm.
He looks
Like
to be
you, actually.
Oh, thank you. I was about to say he looks dishevelled.
No, I don't mean dishevelled. Like he had a big beard and big hair.
Yeah, okay, that'll do. He has beard,
Not
he has a beard and
dishevelled.
big hair, but he also looks like he smells quite bad.
Yeah. You don't. No, okay. You don't look like you smell bad. Sorry, I meant just the facial hair.
So thank you for that. That's good.
I take it back. I just meant the bushiness of his hair and
Yeah,
facial
okay.
hair. The rest, you don't look smelly. I promise.
Yeah. All right. As long as you don't tell me I look like the pig, I think I'm okay.
No. God. Okay, let's move on.
So we
Yeah.
meet Mr. Nicolas Cage. He's walking through this forest, and he's got with him this truffle pig, which
Oh.
isn't your typical pink sort
No.
of smooth boy that you see on farms. This is a hairy little boy.
Harry. It's a
and he's
hairy
got
pig.
jowly little things on his cheeks. Or she, actually, it's a girl, sorry.
She's a
sorry
girl.
to misgender the pig. She is beautiful, actually. I think she's very cute.
She's
I love
so
the pig
cute.
in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very, very good. I don't think she has a name. Does she have a name in this film?
No,
or is she
she's
just
pig.
She's just pig.
Yeah.
She's just his pig. And it's kind of the most beautiful opening sequence in a movie ever. He goes off, she searches for truffles. Do you know why she can find truffles?
Why she can find truffles?
Like why pigs can find truffles, like what it is about these truffle pigs that allow them to find truffles.
Well, they like them. So
No.
I don't know then.
The truffles give off a scent that is identical to a hormone given off by male pigs or by potential partners, and it's them looking for. I've read this. I'm sorry if I'm spreading misinformation or disinformation, but my understanding is that they're actually sniffing out a hormone that is identical to the potential scent of a mate. So
wow, I didn't know that.
That's interesting.
Learn something new every day. I thought because they like them, because you give them a little bit. No. Because truffle dogs like the truffle.
Interesting.
So you give them a little bit of truffle, and you make them like it, and then it goes to look for
it. But dogs can be trained to follow specific scents, can't they? As well, though.
Yeah.
Generally, I don't know. Maybe it's different.
So pigs are actually attracted to truffles.
Supposedly. Nice. There's an amazing bit where it's snuffling about in the dirt, and Nicolas Cage gets a knife out and like cuts away a piece of the dirt, and then just sort of sticks it in his mouth.
Yeah, that was. Like,
and he doesn't spit it out. He just sort of eats a little bit of dirt.
Yeah,
I'm not quite. I guess he has his methods. He knows how to find truffles. So leave him to it. Anyway. At this point, we don't know anything about Nicolas Cage's character. We don't know his name. We don't know anything about him at all.
No.
But he finds these truffles. He goes back to his little cabin he lives in, which is I'm going to say it's a shack. A shack seems like the correct definition for this.
It's a very basic shack.
Structure. Yeah. To call it a building would be unfair.
Yeah, I think if it rains or there's a bit of wind, it's going to move and.
Yeah. And when he takes his, he's just wearing this kind of big onesie, like an old timey gold prospector in the Wild West or something. But he gets out his cooking equipment and he makes this gorgeous rustic mushroom tart, which is why part one is called rustic mushroom tart, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think you can straight away, once he starts making this meal, you can see that he's a man who knows how to cook food.
Yeah, definitely.
And he has a slice of this tart, and then he seems to just put the pan with the rest of it on the ground, and he lets the pig have her way with it, which is fair because she found the truffles. Let her enjoy them.
Yeah. I know that tart goes all over his bushy beard.
Yeah. So we watch him doing this, and we kind of get the idea that this is his sort of. This is his cycle. This is his sort of life. That he lives in this shack, and he doesn't do anything else. He goes foraging for truffles, and that's it. And he puts them in this little kind of container, puts them to the side, and then we just see him kind of eating, continuing with his day. And then a car pulls up, and what's
very
the first
sober
thing?
Car.
Yeah, and this car is like. It's an intruder into this location. It doesn't belong in this serene, sedate forest because I'm bad with cars. I don't know what kind of car it is, but it's a bright yellow.
Yellow.
I'm going to say it's a Jaguar. It's probably not.
No, I think like rich kids have I don't know, but it's a
Porsche.
It's
a Ferrari. It's a Lamborghini. It's one of those.
Car.
It's a yellow car.
This kid gets clashes out with the colours, with the sounds, with everything that you've just been experiencing for the past.
Yeah. Everything about it is upsetting.
Yeah.
And out of place. And a very upsetting person gets out of it.
Yeah.
Amir, played by Alex Wolff, who have you seen him in anything else before, Alex?
No. This is the first time I saw him.
But so he is in Hereditary.
No? Yeah.
Yep. He plays the teenage son in Hereditary, which he is fantastic in. He plays one of the kids in Jumanji, the new Jumanji films with Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And he also plays one of the children in the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, Old.
Ah.
Yeah, which he's not great in that movie, but nobody's great in that movie, and I'm gonna blame M. Night Shyamalan himself for that one rather than Alex Wolff. So Alex Wolff gets out. He is a mayor. We sort of then see this sequence where he has an entirely one-sided conversation with Nicolas Cage, or Rob, as I think he gets called at this point. We learn his name is Rob, I think, around here. He kind of tries to convince Nicolas Cage to get a phone, or a shower, or any number of mod cons. Because, I mean, Amir is taking these truffles from Nicolas Cage, and these truffles are worth, in my understanding, thousands of dollars. Like one container of truffles that he gets from Nicolas Cage, we're talking thousands, if not like over $10,000, like a lot of money. And he appears to be paying Nicolas Cage in basic supplies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which means his profit margins are insane. So good for Amir. He's found a pretty good thing. He's got a good thing going with Nicolas Cage, it seems. Because Nicolas Cage is uninterested in ever being clean.
Yeah.
Uninterested
or to have a
in being in touch.
conversation with Amir.
Amir's like, what if you die out here? I'll be the one that finds you. Nicolas Cage couldn't care less who finds him if he dies out there.
Yeah.
And I guess we start to see, this scene's quite funny, but I guess if you think about it, these are our first real signs that like something is deeply wrong with Rob, with Nicolas Cage's character. Or not wrong in terms of like he's a bad person, but wrong in terms of like he's hiding from something in his life, potentially.
Definitely.
So Amir leaves. Oh, there's a bit where he swears at the pig, which made me dislike him. I think immediately you take a bit of a dislike to Amir because he kind of swears at the pig.
Because by that point, I had already fallen in love with the pig.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, don't touch the pig.
No, the pig is perfect. Don't be mean to pig.
Pig is perfect.
Yeah. But Amir sort of swears at the pigs, doesn't show the pig much respect, which is mad because his living is basically from the pig. Yeah. Like we don't learn at this exact moment, but his job is to sell rare delicacies to restaurants in Portland, which is the kind of major city in Oregon. And obviously Truffles will be a big part of that. So his sort of entire business model is basically based off this pig. So he should show it some damn respect.
But what you realize with Amir is just like he arrives in this big yellow car to show off and listening a full blast to classical music. And then this kid basically comes out of his car swearing and being obnoxious. And it's just this like, what kind of human are you? Are you trying to, like, you already at least in my opinion, it just seems like Amir just seems already like a character that is trying to portray something that is not.
Yeah, and I think that's supported by, a little bit later on, we learn that he's not just listening to classical music on full volume. He's listening to like some sort of radio show or podcast that explains why classical music is good. Yeah. And again, it's similar to like, does he just think that he's supposed to like classical music because he's kind of lives in this high art, high class world, and he doesn't actually understand it, and that's not actually who he is, and is he projecting an image? There's a lot of amazing character work done with Amir in this film that is under the surface and not sort of explicitly told to the audience, which I think is wonderful. And we can talk about them more as we go on. So yeah, Amir leaves. Nicolas Cage kind of continues his existence with the pig for a little bit. Cuts to nighttime. There's a sequence where he gets a cassette player out and listens to this cassette of a woman talking to him. I don't remember what she says at this point in the movie. I don't know if it really matters. It says "For Robin" on the cassette tape, doesn't it? Which we later learn is his name. Yeah. So yeah, he listens to this cassette tape of this woman talking. He goes to bed, and what happens to him?
Somebody is outside his house. He hears somebody outside his house.
Yep.
And he goes to open the door, and the door gets smashed in, and the pig gets kidnapped.
Yeah. And it's not an action scene, really. The door is smashed and the camera sort of falls as Nicolas Cage falls.
Oh,
and
that
he's
was a
knocked to the
beautiful
floor.
moment when the camera falls with Nicolas Cage, and then you just hear the pig squealing.
Yeah, it's hard. That's a horrible noise.
And it's horrible. You're like, what? The only source of happiness of this man is squealing away.
Yeah. Horrible.
It's a horrible scene.
It is a horrible scene, and he kind of gets knocked to the floor, but you don't really see much of it. And again, it's partly just the budget of the movie probably doesn't allow for big action sequences. But again, it's an early sign that this isn't an action film. You know, despite the presence of Nicolas Cage, despite the plot synopsis of it being kind of a revenge movie, he's not going to go out there and fight back. He's not that person. He's not equipped, to fight back necessarily physically. So it's interesting. It immediately kind of makes you think, well, how's he going to handle this situation?
Yeah.
So it sort of cuts to the morning. We see the devastation that's been wrought upon his shack. Yeah. And he kind of comes to and wakes up, realises his pig is gone.
Oh.
And just immediately moves with a purpose, finds this old truck.
Yes.
Fills it with some gasoline.
Yeah.
And attempts to drive off to look for his pig, and he gets probably about a couple of 100 meters before.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't driven it for years.
No, he clearly hasn't driven it for a long time or left that area for a long time. So he has to get out and walk, and he comes upon a diner.
Yeah.
A classic American diner. He walks in and immediately sticks out as being out of place because again he looks horrific.
Yeah.
And
his
there's
face
a thing.
has been hit by the door, so is he already bleeding at this point?
I think he's got scratches and cuts, but he's not bleeding as heavily as he will be later.
Okay.
Because there's a thing in this movie where he does not clean himself. He does not wash himself off. So he just every kind of injury he sustains is added to the pile of injuries and scratches and cuts. So at this point he's looking fairly dishevelled because he was already dishevelled and now he's being knocked to the ground and hit. So he steps into his diner and he says, is it Mary? I can't remember the name necessarily, but he says, is Mary here? And the woman behind the counter is just like, she died 10 years ago. And again...
So you kind of assume that maybe that he's been there for 10 years.
Straight away you're like, okay, so this is the nearest building to where he lives. And it's clearly it's over a decade since he's even been this far. So he's really only interacted probably with Amir, and that's it in the past.
And the pig.
Over a decade at least.
Yeah.
And the pig, of course, the pig. So, and then there's a bit, there's a sort of an exchange I really love where she's like, Mary's been dead for 10 years, and Nicolas Cage is like, right, can I use your phone? And she's just like, are you going to buy anything? And Nicolas Cage is just sort of goes, no, I'm not. And she just sort of silently grabs the phone and puts it on the counter for him to use. And I don't think we see him to make the call, but moments later we see a familiar yellow eyesore roll up outside. Yeah,
with some music blasting.
Yeah, with very loud classical music blasting out of it. And Amir has returned to us. Because I suppose, as we've just said, this is the only person with whom Nicolas Cage has any sort of affiliation at this point. He's the only person who's... It's amazing that he even knows Amir's phone number. I don't know. Yeah. That's probably almost a plot hole in terms of how on earth would he get in touch with Amir? He's never had a phone before. Would he know his number? Anyway, let's just assume that at some point Amir's given him his number.
Business card,
Yeah, just in case. So Amir turns up and very much has... Again, he's not really recognising the fact that his business exists thanks to Nicolas Cage and his pig. So he's being very sort of rude, uninterested, like, why am I here? Come on, man, it's just a pig kind of thing. And Nicolas Cage has to be like, if you want me to continue providing you with truffles, you need to help me find this pig. Otherwise, we're done. So he takes him to, I guess, what... We're not really told what it is, but I'm assuming it's more... of a actual business that is involved in finding truffles somewhere else in the Oregonian wilderness, run by this woman who I think sort of is an actual like truffle farmer. Not that you can farm truffles, but it's a more structured organisation.
I think she probably pays people to find truffles on her land. And
exactly. Yeah, and in money rather than like beans and.
And this is one of my favorite scenes, I think.
Why?
Well, because they go to this woman and instead of showing absolutely no interest like Amir has just done, she goes like, nobody messes around with somebody else's pig or something. Yeah,
but it's great because she's like, Amir's kind of going, oh, sorry, we need to do it. And then Nicolas Cage just goes, I'm looking for my pig. And she goes, what kind of pig? And he goes, it's a truffle pig. And then she just, like you say, she just flips and he's like,
she flips.
Mother.
You go,
storms off. It's one of the first like really amazing moments in the movie. I agree. I really love this bit where this actress plays it so well of just as soon as she realises somebody's harmed or mistreated a truffle pig, because she probably recognises the value in a truffle pig. Like these are things that can pull in hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime, if not millions. So she recognises, probably because also she appreciates the animals, but also she recognises, it's like you've gone into somebody's business and burned down their shop. It's not okay. It's not acceptable. So she goes off, and I think immediately she knows exactly who it is that's going to have done it.
Yeah.
And takes Nicolas Cage and Amir, takes Rob and Amir to these sort of, I guess, hillbillies, you might describe them as.
Yeah, they seemed like junkies, really, like some.
Yeah, well, the plot synopsis I'm using to help go through the film describes them as a pair of junkies.
Yeah, they seem to be like probably sold a pig for drugs or something.
Yeah, but that's an interesting thing is that they kind of admit, like, oh yeah, it was us, we took the pig.
Yeah,
and,
straight away.
There's no hide. They don't hide the fact they took the pig. But they're like, we've already given it to the guy. We don't know who he is. They're like, he drove an expensive car and he came from the city. So that's the first lead that Nicolas Cage gets. Yeah. But it's interesting that, again, like, if this was John Wick and it was John Wick looking for the people that had killed his dog, and he found the people that had driven the person to the house to kill his dog or something, he wouldn't have left that trailer without shooting those two people in the head. But Nicolas Cage isn't interested in revenge. We kind of start to see this was an early point where I was like, oh, that's interesting. He's not sort of attacked them. He's not like being angry with them necessarily. He just wants them to help him find his pig. He just wants his pig back. He's not interested in violence or aggression. And it's a surprising choice in a movie because that's one of the key like verbs of a film is violence. Yeah. And to have this film avoid violence, or have Nicolas Cage's character in particular avoid violence at all turns, and we'll see a much more extreme example of him avoiding violence in a few minutes.
Yeah. But because his interest is not being violent against people, his interest is just his pig, and it's just amazing because we kind of lose sight of that in films that you have to have violence to achieve something. Yeah. It's like no, he wants his pig. that's the only thing he wants.
Yeah, he's got one goal. Give me my pig back. Give me that pig. So they've got their first lead now. Okay, so and it's not much of a lead. It's somebody in Portland, which is an enormous city, has got your pig. So they head to Portland, and they go to a food market at night time, and yes, that was a scene that I was just a bit like, oh, okay, yeah. They go to this sort of food market, and they go to like a trailer in the back of this food market, and there's a man who's I don't remember the name of this guy, but I think we kind of learn quite pretty much immediately that this is a guy who is important in Portland in the cuisine world, in the food world. Yeah. And Rob goes in to talk to him, and the guy's like, I'm not helping you. Your name doesn't mean anything anymore in this town. You have no value. I'm not going to do anything to help you. So Nicolas Cage leaves, Rob leaves. And at this point, we're starting to see that I think this is our first sign that Rob is beyond being a truffle forager. Yeah. He is someone. he used to be someone.
Yeah, he used to have a name.
Yeah, and I think we know that this guy can help.
Yeah,
but he's uninterested in helping because Nick he doesn't think that Nicolas Cage is important anymore.
Yeah.
So then we get what would be, in my opinion, the most surreal moment of this film.
Yeah.
The moment where it veers closest to being similar to John Wick is where they go to this restaurant, they go to the back door, and Nicolas Cage convinces Amir to sort of help him get into this kitchen, because I think Amir knows the chef who comes out, and they're talking to this chef. Yeah. And they go into this kitchen, and Nicolas Cage just goes to this wall and starts pulling boxes down from this shelving unit. And Amir is like, you need to tell me what's going on, right, I'm leaving. And eventually Nicolas Cage is like, okay, fine, I'll explain. Or I can't remember exactly what he says to him at this point, but he sort of just says, he just kind of again repeats, all I care about is finding my pig. This is going to help me get to my pig. This is sort of like he's like, we're going into the old Portland that's been built on top of over many years. And he kind of then reveals this tunnel.
Yeah.
Into old Portland.
Yeah.
And they go into this tunnel and they pass into this world, and they find, and the film kind of brilliantly doesn't explain actually really what is happening in this room.
No. So you have to kind of assume.
It's an underground fighting ring of some description.
Yeah.
And it seems like chefs.
Only for chefs and
It's just for chefs.
Workers.
Yeah. It's just chefs and restaurant workers.
Yeah.
Well, so here's my assumption. Here's my guess at what it is.
Okay, let's see.
Chefs can go and write their name up on a board.
Yeah.
And then the restaurant workers will bid on who gets to fight the chef.
Yeah.
And the idea, I think, is because chefs can be quite harsh to the people who work for them.
Yeah.
Is that people wanting a chance to kick the shit out of their boss will bid high. So the more well-known you are, the more money you're going to earn from putting your name up on this wall. Do you think that's about right?
Well, I was thinking more of like the tension that you have working in a kitchen.
Yeah.
And you release this tension by being hit or hitting someone.
But people
until
bid
they
on
collapse.
Yeah, but people bid, don't they, on
but
getting...
then people bid, so it's kind of like, chefs are like that way because they're under an enormous stress. So I thought that would be like a kind of like a punch ball, like a anti-stress, violent anti-stress kind of activity.
But I think I think there's an element of like, because he goes in, because Rob walks in with Amir, and the guy that he saw earlier is running this underground fighting ring, the guy who wouldn't give him any information. And Rob walks past him and goes up to the board and grabs a piece of chalk, and in massive letters, he writes Robin Feld. Yeah. So now we know his name. His name is Robin Feld, right? And then people start bidding, and a lot of, people put in a big bid. So that's why I thought the element of like, I think rather than making any money off it, he's done this to show the guy that his name still means something. Yeah. And that was what will convince the guy to help him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
So I think that's what's happening. I think he's proving to the guy that his name still carries weight in that town. Yeah. So then somebody does, and it's again, and we learn, I think later on, from context, we can imagine that this person that pays to attack Robin probably used to work for Robin. Yeah. And probably really relishes the opportunity to tear a piece of him off. Yeah. Because he comes up and just... And again, another subversion of what you expect. This guy comes up, hits Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage does nothing. Nothing. And you're like, no, stop. It's so violent. He just takes it. Yeah. Which is an amazing moment again, because you expect it to be, there's an underground fighting ring, there's going to be a fight scene now, we're going to see some real action. No, we just see Nicolas Cage get like knocked to the ground and beaten up. But after the attack, Nicolas Cage is properly bloodied.
Yeah.
But he does manage to drag a clue out of the fighting ring guy.
Yeah.
Which is the name of a restaurant. Eurydice. It's called Eurydice? Eurydice.
Yeah, I guess. Eurydice, yeah.
And now we enter, I think this is correct, now we enter part 2 of the film. I think this is the point that we see part 2.
Yeah.
So because it cuts to the next morning, we see kind of a shot of the skyline of Portland, and we see part 2, Mom's French toast and deconstructed scallops.
Yes.
That's part 2 of this movie. Okay, so it's then we join Amir and Rob, or Robin Feld as we now know, in Amir's flat or apartment, and in stark contrast to the dwelling that Nicolas Cage was living in, this is a modern, very clean lines, very bare apartment. Again, maybe signifying somebody who has not much of an interior life at the moment.
No.
Amir's character. It's a very bare kind of apartment. He doesn't do much cooking. He attempts to cook French toast for him and Rob's breakfast, hence the Mom's French toast.
And Robin has not washed a single hair in his body by now.
No,
so,
he's covered in mud.
Like, he has not got changed. He has not washed his face or his hands. And so there's this beautiful, clean apartment. And then there's Rob, who is bloodied, crusted, dirty. I was like, how? Like, in my head, it's like, why not? Wash your face. You're going to feel better if you wash your face. But he doesn't.
No, that's very true. So Amir makes this French toast for them for breakfast, and then they just starts talking about how now he knows he's Robin Feld, the chef. Yeah. Starts to talk about him as a chef, and we immediately start to infer that he's sort of a bit of a legendary figure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's a bit of a celebrity chef.
Yeah.
And Amir describes his parents and starts talking about his parents, and that his parents' marriage wasn't very happy. But they always used to talk about this one date they had, this one meal they had together, which was a meal that they had at Robin's restaurant. So, and that they would always, for years and years afterwards, they went for a meal together at Robin's restaurant, Robin cooked them dinner, and for years afterwards, Amir's parents would always talk about this one meal as being, one of these really important moments in their life. And then his mother committed suicide and died. Yeah. Is what he tells Rob. So Rob doesn't really, as with most things that happen to him, Rob doesn't really react to this information at all. But I think we know absolutely takes it in because it's key information. Yeah. And then he starts to sort of also discuss the fact that his father is also in the rare cuisine business. And we start to understand that maybe Amir seems so insecure, is listening to classical music. Yeah. With instructions on how to appreciate the classical music. Has an apartment that he's not really given any character to because he doesn't really want to show what his character is, I don't think. Because maybe he's trying to live up to lofty expectations passed down by his father, who we start to learn might not be the nicest man in the world.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. So, he
and you start feeling understanding Amir and maybe opening up to him as well more than
definitely.
Because until that point, it's not a very likable character.
Absolutely, and you start to see that complexity of his character and start to kind of learn to like him. And I think Alex Wolff does amazing work. Yeah,
absolutely.
He's a young actor and he's working opposite one of cinema's most iconic actors, and who is apparently one of his favourite actors just personally.
Yes.
So that must have been kind of
so
terrifying.
much pressure.
And also
so
considering in a lot of ways he's carrying these scenes. Like Nicolas Cage is doing very little.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot. He's in interviews, he's discussed how he approached his performance as like a haiku, and it's all about the spaces in between the words, and he gets very philosophical when he describes his acting performances, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, but he's if he said that about this performance, is 100% true.
Yeah, exactly. But he's not being very flashy, and in terms of like what the audience is going to be following in terms of understanding the plot of the film, Alex Wolff is having to deliver that exposition, and it's he's almost talking to himself, and he does a great job of keeping you engaged. Nicolas Cage does his haiku as well. So Rob asks Amir if he can get them reservations at Eurydice. And immediately Amir's like, well, that's sort of a very that's a tall order, Rob.
Yeah.
So we go off and we follow each of them on a different sort of errand. We see Rob go to sell some of his truffles to a local restaurant, I suppose it is, although it looks like it's a slaughterhouse because the guy is
like
just
a
sort
butcher's.
of... Yeah, it's a butcher's,
like a butcher. Yeah.
But I guess he's selling the guy his truffles anyway. I'm not sure why he's
or
selling
maybe
them to
or maybe he's like a butcher behind a restaurant, or all this
could
kind of
be
fancy stuff that we don't know about.
Yeah, it could be some upmarket hotel that has its own butchery. Anyway, he's selling this stuff to the guy, and he's like, "Can you get me reservations at Eurydice?" And the guy's like, "Well, that's your father's. That's like your father sells to Eurydice, so I'm not going to get involved in that." And immediately we're like, "Oh, people are scared of Amir's dad. Like Amir's dad's maybe not a gangster, but certainly not somebody that people want to cross in this
truffle gangster.
Yeah, truffle gangster in this like cuisine world of the secret hidden world in Portland." So I think Amir ends up basically having to give him these truffles for free to secure the lunch reservation. And while that's happening, we see Rob just sort of go to this house, and it's a very sort of quiet scene, obviously because it's Rob, so there's not much going on in terms of like dialogue. But he goes to this house and sits on the back porch and just talks to this little girl at the house. And I think we kind of infer that this is the house he lived in with his partner years before. And he just sort of has a conversation and leaves. What's your take on that? Like, do you have a reading of that scene? Because it's a very sort of... You could easily forget it even happens when you're thinking over the film.
Yeah, well, I think because he must be grieving so much. So the more the film goes on, the more you realize how much he grieved, or how much he didn't grieve. I think he just abandoned everything and left. And in a way, going back there, maybe he needed that just to face it. Because I think he has to go through a journey as well of trying to move on and become better. Because I don't think even however time he has spent in the woods in Portland, he still can't. You were talking about the cassette tape that he put on of his wife. We assume that he didn't listen to it all because he couldn't. So I think going back to the house is kind of facing the fact that the person is not around anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it is a healing process for him. And
yeah,
I think
to see that this house has moved on.
Yeah,
There's
and
new
it's got a
people living
kid
there.
in it, and the kid is like happy to live there. And I think it's for him. And I think this film is full of these kind of healing moments that you could say, oh, it's not necessary, but if you think about them, they are for Rob.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So I agree. So then we go. So Amir's secured this reservation at Eurydice. Rob has joined him, and they've gone to Eurydice, and then we cut to them sitting in the centre of this restaurant again.
Which is...
Rob has done nothing to tidy himself up.
Rob is so dirty.
Yeah. And if there's a place that could look any more sterile and dry than Amir's apartment, it's this restaurant.
Yeah. But the amazing thing that they let them in, like, and that's the thing is, you know, because this restaurant is a proper.
Yeah, it's true, but they get in.
Very fancy restaurant.
Yeah, and they're having the tasting menu, I suppose. And this is a restaurant that is entirely, and it's a very trendy sort of cliche food thing nowadays. It's all about deconstructing things.
Yeah.
It's a restaurant that does deconstructed scallops, which is part of the title of this part of the movie, along with a bunch of deconstructed other things. The waitress is very polite and friendly and brings them their food. And I think is this the point where Nicolas Cage just like thumbs this scallop?
Yeah.
just like
like
shoves his thumb on it.
Does the waitress tell them what everything has been sourced from?
Yeah.
So she goes on a spiel of what.
It's very renewable, you know. Yeah. This
and
is
then
from
she
here,
opens,
this is from here.
and there's like 3 little pieces of something on it.
Yeah.
And Nicolas Cage, instead of like people are like, oh, that's amazing. Nicolas Cage totally does the opposite of what we're supposed to do in a way, and just destroys.
He just like smushes it under his thumb.
Yeah, with his dirty thumb.
This deconstructed scallop. And then basically just immediately asks to see the chef.
Yeah.
And the chef, Derek, comes out and is immediately this kind of like very simpering sort of like, yes, hello, yes, this is deconstructed, we sourced it from here. And Rob's asking him something. I can't remember what question Rob is asking him, but Derek's kind of like, I think he says, where did you get the truffles from? Or are truffles part of the menu? He's like, oh yes, well, you know, autumn's coming up, so truffles are going to be part of our menu, and that it's important that they've been locally sourced. And I think Amir at this point is like, tell him who you are. And Rob just sort of looks at him, and you see this kind of sheet fall away from the guy's face as he realises who he's stood in front of, and he's like, Chef Feld. And he's clearly completely in awe that he suddenly realises who this sort of filthy, hairy thing is in front of him actually is. And he immediately like sits down, and probably my favourite scene in the movie then plays out.
Yeah.
Where
beautiful.
Derek is, this is his restaurant, he's the head chef, this is his environment, but... and this is a very sort of pretentious way to describe this scene, but in the way that Derek deconstructs his food, Rob then sets out on a path of deconstructing Derek and breaking him down. And you see this grimace on Derek's face. Like what starts off as a smile just very slowly turns into a grimace as Derek kind of is like, obviously internally is thinking, this isn't how I expected today to go. I'm a successful chef. People like what I do. Why is this happening to me? And we learn throughout this conversation that Derek used to be a pasta chef at Nicolas Cage's restaurant for like 2 months. Yet Nicolas Cage still remembers him, and that's key. That's a very key bit of information, is that Nicolas Cage remembers everything he did when he was a chef. He is not, he's not, like, he might have left his old life, but he's not forgotten it. He knows exactly who Derek is, and he fired Derek for being too slow. But he still remembers what Derek wanted to do with his life, and it was not run a pretentious, deconstructed restaurant in downtown Portland.
Yeah.
What did he want to do, Alex?
He wanted to open a pub.
He wanted to open a pub and sell traditional pub food.
Which is totally like the opposite of what he has opened. Like... And he wanted to make, different kind of food, not this pretentious food that makes no sense.
And that
has no meaning.
He just starts blurting out the things to Nicolas Cage that he's obviously been saying to himself to convince himself that these are the right decisions in his life, and that like people don't want pub food. This is what people want. And Nicolas Cage is like, these people don't care about you. They don't respect you. Why are you doing this for them? You should be doing this for you. And he just sort of really breaks this guy. Derek is a broken man. He's been destroyed by the time this ends.
Yeah.
which is great. It's just such a it's the rather than turning up and smashing his kneecaps in and putting a gun at his head.
He does.
He achieves the same result. He breaks
Yeah.
the man in much deeper ways by just destroying him emotionally.
Yeah.
And Derek confesses, and at this point we find out who is behind the theft of the pig. And unfortunately, it's no one other than Amir's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Amir's father.
Yeah.
Darius. And if there's ever been a name that's exclusively held for awful people,
It's Darius.
Sorry if a Darius is listening, I'm sure you're lovely. But that is not the name of a nice man in a movie. So Amir's father, Darius, stole the pig. And he knew about the pig. Why?
Because of his son.
Because of his son, because Amir told him about the pig. Straight away, judgments can be made on Darius.
Yeah.
Darius is a successful businessman. We see his house in a few minutes. We know he's very wealthy. His son is setting out on his own, trying to run his own business. His centerpiece of his business is clearly Rob and his pig. He tells his dad about it, and his dad's response is to destroy his son's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a good person. Certainly the villain
No.
of the piece.
Definitely. And the villain in the sense of like, so, you know, he doesn't believe in his son, and he doesn't think that his son can be as big as him. So instead of like helping him, he takes away his business.
Yeah, yeah.
So he can one day work in an office for him.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve that pig. That pig is
because he's not good enough. He's not going to make enough. He's not going to be successful enough with his pig. His father's going to be more successful, and so let's take the pig away.
Yeah, because he's a sort of wealthy, entitled, middle upper class white guy who just kind of, if he wants something, he's entitled to have it. So he takes. So he's taken this pig because he wanted it.
Yeah.
So Darius has the pig, and Rob is unsurprisingly pretty unhappy at this stage of the film to learn that it's Amir's father who has taken the pig.
Yeah.
Rob kicks the hell out of the side of Amir's car.
Yeah.
Because Amir refuses to take him to his father. Mm-hmm. Because he's obviously terrified of his father. And he's now terrified of this entire situation. And seeing Nicolas Cage just beat the crap out of this horrible car is a glorious part of this movie.
Yeah.
Because he's just screaming. He's just like going, ah! And
Yeah.
he's kicking this car.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. And then, and again, immediately another wonderful bit. Rob leaves Amir and steals a bicycle. I think he makes Amir tell him his father's address, and then he leaves him. He steals a bicycle and he cycles to Darius's house, and he goes into Darius's home, which is this huge, ornate, very different to Amir's flat. It's very full of fancy stuff. It's very like wooden banisters and twizzly little whirly bits of wood and stuff, and just a very sort of, it's got a lot of character, but it also feels at the same time like any other rich person's house. It doesn't have character in terms of Darius's character. Its character is exclusively saying, I am wealthy, look at all my wealth. Darius, we meet Darius. He's played by Adam Arkin, son of the great Alan Arkin, from Little Miss Sunshine. He's been in loads of stuff over the years, Adam Arkin, and he has, despite being kind of the third lead of this film, he has a relatively small role compared to Alex Wolff and Nicolas Cage, but he does do a good job in the role. He's unpleasant. He's very sure of himself. He's very confident. He doesn't have any interest in making Nicolas Cage happy.
No.
And also, he's a man who has lived his life in a way where any problem can be solved by money.
Yeah.
So he will not give Nicolas Cage his pig back.
No, yeah, and that scene is really like, well, I'm gonna give you this money, go away.
Yeah. Go away, here's $25,000. Go away.
Go
I'm going to
away.
have it delivered to
And
that little
scene was
hovel
so
that you live in.
poignant because it's just like, you have stolen somebody's pig, somebody's livelihood, and you just go, well, toodaloo, go away. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You
the
don't
person
matter.
the person who you have stolen from is stood in front of you, and you're not even denying that you did that. You're just saying, well, I was buying it off you effectively, and here's the money for it. So just accept the money. You can't back out of the deal now, kind of thing. It's
but
like,
you know exactly that Nicolas Cage, well, Rob, with $25,000 is not going to do absolutely nothing because he doesn't care.
Yeah,
he doesn't care about the $25,000. He cares about his pig.
Yeah, exactly. So he doesn't. And then Rob's a bit like, no, give me back my pig. And he threatens, basically says, take the $25,000 or I'll chop your pig up into pieces and send you the pieces.
Oh.
And obviously Rob is pretty unhappy that this happens. And we then see Amir visiting his mother, who isn't dead.
No.
She is alive.
Yeah.
But she's in a coma. And I think the implication being that she did attempt suicide, sadly. It wasn't successful, but it was successful enough that she's left permanently in this coma.
Yeah.
Which obviously Amir hates it. Amir would rather let her just sort of, pass on rather than be in this permanent coma. But because his father refuses to lose anything or have anything not go his way, he's paying for and insisting that she be kept alive in this in this permanent coma. And Amir can't even enter the room.
No.
Amir kind of stands outside the room and has this conversation with her. And it's yet another one-sided conversation because from Nicolas Cage, who won't talk, his scene partner in this is a woman in a coma. So it's another one-sided conversation from Alex Wolff. And again, he really, really sells it. And he's just amazing. Just fantastic. And he goes back to Rob, picks Rob up from Darius's house. And at this point in the movie, and this is such a sad and kind of beautiful moment, Rob admits that he doesn't actually need the pig to find Truffles.
No.
He can use the trees to find Truffles. He doesn't need a truffle pig. He just likes having a companion because he lives on his own in a hut in the woods.
And he loves her.
Yeah, and he loves his pig. And what's wrong with that?
His pig. I'm crying
People have pets and they love their pets. It's his pet. It's his companion.
Yeah.
He needs it. So he then asks Amir to help him get his pig back. And again, there's another subversion where they're not going to... in another movie, he might send Amir off to go and buy a shotgun and a pistol and a grenade. But instead, he sends Rob to go and get a bottle of wine and a... What is it? It's not a chicken. What's the bird? Here we go. Pigeon.
Pigeon.
So he sends Amir to get a bottle of wine and a pigeon. And he goes off himself somewhere. And at this point, we enter part 3 of the film, the final act. And this is titled Part 3, A Bird, a Bottle, and a Salted Baguette. And we open with Rob visiting his former restaurant.
Yeah.
His and Laurie's former restaurant. And here we learn a little bit more. His wife was named Laurie. I think this might be where we learn that information. But his wife was called Laurie, and she sadly passed away. And that was the point where Robin kind of pulled out of life, abandoned everything, and moved into the wilderness. And his restaurant is now being run as a bakery by his former baker. Yeah. Who, again, it's this. You could almost see her as his daughter. If they made it clear, I could see this character as being his daughter. But I'm not sure she is. I think she may just be an ex-employee.
Yeah, you don't really know because you kind of feel they might be his daughter, but you know that this person has touched so many lives
Yeah.
that I think anybody would feel. I think anybody is related to him in a way, in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
there's a scene, they're sat down in the back of the shop, and the camera is just sort of up in the corner of the room looking
Yeah.
down on them. The camera's quite far away during the sequence, and they're having a conversation. He's talking about, oh, you've changed the curtains and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And she's just sort of clearly very happy to see him and just kind of chatting to him. And there's a tray of pastries next to them. And he takes one of them, and there's this great bit where I don't know, just a lovely little touch from Nicolas Cage where he picks one up and he sort of looks at it and then he puts it down and he takes a different one, and they look identical as far as we can see, but he just is able to just go, no, this is the one I want, this is the good one. And then he says, do you still make those salted baguettes? And she says yes. So he grabs a couple of salted baguettes and he goes to walk out and leave, and she just sort of hugs him.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And he must really have touched her life, because to hug that man,
yeah, he's filthy by this point.
Yeah, he's covered in dirt and mud and spit and every unpleasant substance you can imagine. But she hugs him and embraces him because she clearly loves him. Whether, I don't think she's his daughter. I think the scene would probably play out slightly differently, but she just loves him.
He clearly is very important to her.
Yeah. And while he's doing this, we see that Amir visits a mausoleum. And the manager of the mausoleum takes Rob, and I think this is supposed to be, according at least to this that I'm reading, and it makes sense, to Rob and Laurie's personal wine collection, which has been stored in this mausoleum, which is where Laurie is also being stored. So he takes this bottle of wine that Rob's asked. And at first he walks up to this mausoleum and asks to go in, and they say no. And he says, oh, Robin Feld sent me. And they immediately just let him in because, as we learned earlier in the film, his name does mean something to people still, despite having been gone for over a decade. I think it's meant to be closer to 15 years even, how long he's been away.
Yeah, a long time.
So she gives him this bottle of wine, and she also takes him and shows him Laurie's place stone it's a wall of stones with various people's ashes stored, and so shows him Laurie's and asks him to tell Rob that there's a space next to Laurie reserved for him. And he leaves and meets back up with Rob, and they sneak into Darius's home. Because presumably Amir has a key, I guess, to his dad's house. So they sneak in. Yeah. And rather than sneaking in, going up to his bedroom and attacking him, they go to his kitchen. And Rob and Amir proceed to cook a meal, which is made of a pigeon, this bottle of wine, this baguette, and a few other things. And they cook this meal. And I think probably most people can guess at this stage what this meal is. And Amir, and again, it's actually really it's a parallel to the scene of him with his mother. He goes to Darius's study, and again, he can't enter the room with his father. No. He stands on the outside, and very, very so quietly that I would think you wouldn't be able to hear him. He says, "Dad," and his dad goes, "Go away, leave me alone," and he says, we've cooked you dinner, you come and eat it. And he goes and he eats the meal. He joins them and they sit down together, the three of them, with this meal in front of them, and they start to eat. Yeah. And you kind of quickly realise that this must be the meal that Robin cooked for Darius and his wife all those years ago that they used to talk about. Yeah. Yeah. And Darius is so full of anger and hate that he starts eating this meal and doesn't have any recognition of this. That's what this is. But as he takes a few bites, you can sort of see his face start to break. And eventually he breaks down and he puts his knife and fork down, storms out, and goes back to his office. And Rob follows him in and he says, "Why are you doing this?" And Rob says, "I remember every meal I've ever cooked for everyone." And that's, that's confirmed. This is the meal that he cooked for Darius and his wife. And I think we can see that Rob probably feels a sort of kinship with Darius, knowing that they're both men who have lost their wives. And has again approached it on a very human, emotional level of connecting with him to make him see Rob as another human being rather than just an obstacle to be paid off. And again, rather than just attacking him and beating him until he gives the pig back, he's sort of taken this approach. And at this point, the most horrible thing,
the most devastating thing happens.
Yeah, Rob again asks where the pig is, and at this point, Darius admits that the pig is dead.
Oh, I cried so much when this happened.
Yeah. Because the junkies that we met earlier in the movie
is so terrible.
Yeah, the junkies they met earlier in the movie obviously had no idea how to handle a live animal and mistreated it. And by the time it got to Darius, it just wasn't in any state and had to be put down. And Nicolas Cage, Rob, finally, when he finally realizes he's not getting his pig back, he just breaks down. And is, completely and totally devastated. So he doesn't take revenge. He doesn't attack Darius at this point because it would achieve nothing. He just leaves and he goes with Amir back to the diner where he initially called Amir in the first place. And I think it's around this point as well that he talks about the fact that if he'd never gone to look for the pig, he'd have never known that it had died, and it might have still, in his mind, it would still be alive. But obviously, he had to go and find it and look for the pig.
Yeah.
So, I think he decides to carry on finding Truffles from Amir, and they resume their partnership. And I think they've kind of formed a really strong bond through this experience, and it's probably changed Amir for the better. And he goes back to his cabin. He sits down on his bed, and we hear in full the tape that he was listening to at the start. And now we have the full context of knowing that this is the voice of his wife who has passed away. And she sort of talks to him a little bit. You can tell that she adores him and loves him. And then she starts singing a song, and she plays him I'm on Fire. She does the Bruce Springsteen song I'm on Fire and covers that. And that is the final shot of the movie, is Nicolas Cage sat on this bed contemplating loss of his pig, listening to his dead wife sing Bruce Springsteen. And then the credits appear and it is devastating.
Yeah, I'm crying now. Can you see?
When I watched this in the cinema, it just completely, I was broken by the end of this film because I love that Bruce Springsteen song, and it was the last thing I expected to hear. So it was it was pretty sad. And then I've never watched past the credits, but apparently, did you know there's a post-credit scene?
No.
Well, in the credit scene, right after the music is over, there is a shoveling sound in the background. And then we hear the sound of a pig snorting, and then the shoveling continues. So I suppose maybe he's found a new pig. I hope so. Yeah, I hope so too. And that's Pig.
That's Pig.
That is Pig. That is the movie Pig.
That is Pig.
Right, let's do a quick actor review.
Yeah.
What did you think of Nicolas Cage in this movie?
Nicolas Cage is amazing. Like, we all know Nicolas Cage is a great actor, but he's kind of like always doing kind of crazy acting. But in this film, you kind of forget it's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Because Nicolas Cage is Nicolas Cage, and he's got the crazy faces but with the minimal amount of facial expression and dialogue, and you can see a man that is grieving, that is sensitive to things, that is a deep character, but without barely changing facial expressions. And also, it's got this massive beard that covers his face, and
Yeah.
so he managed to portray a character without doing anything but giving so much. I think he's unbelievable in this film. Probably one of his best portrayals.
I think it might be his best performance, which after the career he's had and the number of different movies he's made
and
is
I love
incredible.
Nicolas Cage. I love
Oh yeah, so do
in
I.
all of his, like, I love his movies. I love watching Nicolas Cage, but the fact that he can still surprise you now, unbelievable, really and truly.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, I've read interviews in where he's talked about how he wanted people to see again that he could be a good actor, because I think he's aware that he's formed this in recent years he's gained this reputation for being quite wacky and making films like The Colour Out of Space and Mandy, and then really bad movies as well, where he's not really doing his best thing. And he's compared his performance to a haiku and how he doesn't have many lines, and in a haiku the beauty comes from the spaces between the words, and he wanted his performance to be all about the spaces between the words. And he obviously thought very carefully and put a lot of effort and passion into the movie. Which is amazing for him because he's a massive actor. He does star in blockbusters, not as often nowadays, but he is a big actor still. And this is a tiny movie. It was filmed over the course of about 20 days.
20 days.
Had a
amazing,
minuscule budget. And he could easily have just gone, I'm doing a favour to the director by even being on set, and just treated it like that. But instead he really put his life into it, and it pays off. It's amazing. How about Amir, Alex Wolff, who plays Amir? What did you think?
Was the first film I have ever seen him in, and the transition that he goes from the beginning of being this little town horrible little kid that only cares about appearances and doesn't care about anything else, until you then realize why he is like that, and he changes. He's amazing. He's incredible in it, and it must have been quite nerve-wracking to work with such a big star like Nicolas Cage, not saying much, and being able to have basically monologues.
The film is a lot of the film is him monologuing effectively.
And being great at it, and seeing and him becoming more vulnerable the more the film goes on, and him managing to portray that. It's just really great.
The difference between him at the start when he's turning up and he's cocky and full of himself, and then the scenes at the end where he's at his mother's door and then his father's door are so well played, and he does such a good job. And I guess we see much less of him than the other two, but Adam Arkin as Darius,
he's terrifying. Isn't he? Like, he's this terrifying being before even you see him. When you find out that, that's your dad's territory, when they're in the butchers, and Amir wants the table at the Eurydice restaurant, and he's like, oh, that's your father's territory. But in that moment you realize that he's a bad guy, and so bad guy, he's not a very fatherly figure.
Oh, definitely not.
And so you already have an expectation of him before you meet him, and then you meet him, and even though he's got such a small part, it's pretty intense. The moment
definitely.
That he's in.
And I think he probably has the most important shot of the film. I think the when he's eating the meal and his face breaks and he realizes what's happened. If that didn't work, if he didn't play that well, I think the whole movie would suffer for it, because it builds to that point. I think and I think he performs that perfectly. So good job, Adam Arkin. Did anyone else stand out to you in this film particularly? We don't spend that much time with any other characters.
No. What, like, for example, Chef Finway, the chef that he deconstructs, like he's really good in it, and like any scene that Nicolas Cage has with other actors are really good. Even like when he goes to the baker, and that's a really touching scene. Like, I think everybody in this film does everything really well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's thanks to the actors, but I think probably Michael Sarnowski sold this film so well to the people that were
Yeah.
playing it. I think he's if this is his directorial debut, I think he's just hopefully gonna go very far in
I
his
hope so,
career,
because
because
he's amazing. And he's done an incredible job.
because like you said that Alex Wolff in Old is not very good, but you can see his amazing talent here. So that means the director did something for him to be able to be so great.
Yeah, definitely. So, have you got any trivia to share? Anything interesting?
Well, it was only filmed in 20 days, which is amazing. And maybe like it's like filming a film maybe in a short amount of time maybe does give more of a feeling to the actors that they're like living in that space. I don't know, because even Moonlight, that was filmed in a very short amount of time, and it's so you can feel like the people, the actors are like in with the film, and I felt this the same. So I'm not sure if we film something in a short amount of time, it gives more of a sense of belonging to
I bet
a
when
film.
you're
I
on
don't
a
know.
small film that's being shot very quickly with small budget, the people making that movie are probably making it because they're passionate about that story. So I can imagine that does have an impact, definitely. And also, this budget was so tiny that even despite the film being centered around the pig, they couldn't afford a trained pig. So they just had to get, I guess, a pig that wasn't trained and wasn't domesticated particularly. And as a result, Nicolas Cage was bitten a fair number of times by his on-screen co-star.
Yeah.
And supposedly Nicolas Cage jokes that he's been set on fire and been in flipped cars, but it'll be sepsis from a pig bite that kills him in the end. Because he was just getting
he's like, I'm going to die from
mauled by this
sepsis.
pig. Which is fascinating. And I think Nicolas Cage feels quite a lot of similarity between him and Rob. I was reading the other day about he's got a film coming out next year called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Have you heard about this film?
No.
It's a film where Pedro Pascal plays a Mexican drug lord who is an enormous fan of the actor Nicolas Cage. And for his birthday, he's throwing a big birthday party, and he hires Nicolas Cage to come and perform at the birthday party. So Nicolas Cage is in this film playing himself. And I think he discovers a plot to destroy the world or take over the world or something, and has to stop it while at this Mexican drug lord's compound. And he was doing an interview the other day where he was like, I'm never going to watch this movie because I just can't watch myself playing myself. It's too much. And he was like, the me in this film is not similar to the me in real life. In real life, I'm very contemplative and quiet and philosophical. But the director made me be like kind of classic, crazy, wild Nick Cage, and kept pushing that.
Yeah.
So I think that this kind of role where he's being very quiet and very still is something that he, at least he feels, is closer to himself, which is probably partly why he's so good in it, because he connected quite strongly, I think, with the character.
Yeah.
So what were your overall thoughts? What do you think of this movie?
I it's perfect. It's a beautiful film. It's you expect something and you get something completely different. And it really hits what things matter and things that don't matter. Like food, for example, why he says that he remembers every meal that he's ever cooked, and I can relate to that, because I can remember if I had some special food in my life that stayed with me, I'll always remember it. Like I can remember a lot of the food that that I've eaten that I thought was special. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah.
Like, when you have a great meal and you remember that great meal, and you'll always remember it, and like how food brings memories and how important food is, and I thought I really like that about this film. It's beautifully shot. Like the beginning in Portland is so incredible when he's in the woods, and I think it's just a great film. And thinking about it and crying now, we watched it like a month ago or something. We're just talking about it. It just brought back like emotions that I had watching the film.
I agree. I think it's gorgeous and beautiful, and I'm excited about any Nicolas Cage movie that looks like it might be interesting, because I'm a huge fan of Nicolas Cage. So this was on my radar for a while before it came out, and I was expecting a sort of revenge thriller, and that is not what I got. And I sort of I didn't read many reviews before I saw it, but I saw enough kind of headlines of reviews to know that it was probably going to be not quite what I expected. So when I went to see it in the cinema, I had pretty high expectations, but I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. It's definitely, I think, almost certainly going to be my favourite film of the year. I don't think anything's going to top it. And I've watched it twice since I saw it, and I loved it both times. And he's just perfect in it. And, when he describes himself as being, trying to kind of act like a haiku, I just think that's a perfect description of what he does in this movie. He's so still and quiet, but just commands the screen every moment he's on screen. So many people will tell me they hate Nicolas Cage, they don't like him, he makes stupid films, he's not a good actor. And I just want to be like, just watch films like this, just watch Pig and tell me that he's a bad actor. He's so good, and he understands the character, and he understands cinema, and he understands how to portray all of these emotions, but without doing anything. And it's beautiful, and I just love it. I think it's incredible. I think it's a perfect film.
I seriously cannot believe that people think that Nicolas Cage.
I think it's just because he's got this reputation for being silly.
But the amount of range he has, the amount of films he's done, which are very different. Of course, there's some that are similar, but he's incredible.
I agree. I think he's amazing. But yeah, Pig is just the best, the absolute best.
Yeah, definitely. Watch it. If you haven't already watched it.
5 buckets full of truffles for this film. That's what I give it out of 5.
5 buckets full of truffles. Definitely. So
yeah, that's Pig. I hope you'd already seen it before you watched it, before you listened to us talk about it. But if you haven't watched it yet, then still go and watch it, because our words can't do justice to the beautiful scenery captured in this film, and the gorgeous performances. So make sure you do watch this, and join us, please, next week for the big 5-0. Top 5 horror films.
Wow, top 5 horror films.
So join us for that. Join us for our top 5 horror films. It will be October by then, so we'll give you some ideas for Halloween, which is fantastic. And follow us, please, on everything that we do. We were really active on Instagram. You can see movie reviews. You can see Alex's artwork. You can see various other little bits and pieces. So, find us on Instagram. The link to that is in the show notes for this episode and every episode, along with links to various other places you can find us online. And go on Apple Podcasts and other places and rate and review us, and tell people about us and help us grow and be bigger and better. Thank you very much. Love you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.